They called it weakness. The silence, the way I held my tongue, the way I looked away when their words cut too deep, as if I didn't feel it, as if silence meant surrender. But silence is not the absence of pain. It's the burial ground for 1,000 screams. And I buried them all, one by one, with trembling hands and clenched teeth, while they laughed, while they whispered, while they pointed fingers and played gods with paper crowns. I was there, in the shadows of their judgment, in the cold silence of betrayal. And I said nothing, not because I couldn't speak, but because I chose not to. You see, they never understood what silence truly is. It's not retreat, it's not fear, it's not defeat. Silence is restraint. Silence is war before the first blow is struck. Silence is the breath you take before you burn the world down. They took my quiet for cowardice, as if I hadn't felt the sting of knives lodged between my ribs, as if I didn't know the taste of blood swallowed for the sake of peace. But peace was never mine. They stole it, ripped it from my hands, drenched it in mockery, and handed it back broken, just to watch me bleed, trying to hold it together. I watched them, heard the lies, felt every jab dressed as a joke. Too quiet, they said. Too soft, they sneered. He won't fight back, they laughed. No, not then, because I wasn't ready, because I was still learning, because silence was my sanctuary when the world became a slaughterhouse. They think silence is empty, but it is full of memories, of betrayals cataloged, of promises broken so many times I lost count. I wore silence like armor, because words, they were used against me, twisted, mocked, distorted into blades by mouths that knew nothing of truth. So I learned not to waste my breath. I stopped defending myself to people who only listened to destroy. I stopped explaining pain to those who danced on the edge of it for sport. I let them speak. I let them assume. I let them build their lies on the foundation of my quiet. Let them. Every time I bit my tongue, I was sharpening another weapon. Every time I looked away, I was watching more than they knew. Every time I stayed silent, I was storing fire. They saw calm, but inside I was a war they couldn't comprehend. They wanted a reaction, a scream, a breakdown, something to validate their cruelty. But I gave them nothing, not because I was broken, but because I was building resolve, building rage, building a fortress from every scar they left behind. Let them talk, let them doubt, let them measure my silence with their ignorance, because what they don't know, what they will never understand, is that silence doesn't mean submission. Silence means strategy, and mine was flawless. I let them dig the grave, smirking, smug, certain I was already in it. They didn't know I was behind them, holding the shovel. Not because silence, my silence is not the end, it's the prelude. The hush before the scream, the breath before the battle cry. I wasn't hiding, I was preparing. I wasn't lost, I was waiting, not for mercy, not for justice, but for the moment when every doubt, every laugh, every word they spoke would come back to choke them. They thought I was weak because I didn't roar, but lions don't answer to sheep. And now I've stopped swallowing my fire. Now I remember every face, every word, every betrayal. Let them think I disappeared. Let them think I was broken. Let them rest easy in their arrogance. Because I was silent, but I was never gone, and I was never defeated. They mistook the calm for surrender. They mistook the quiet for weakness. They mistook the stillness for death. But I'm still here, and they'll regret every single doubt. They thought I wasn't paying attention. That silence meant ignorance. That stillness meant blindness. But I saw everything, every whisper, every back turned, every smirk when I walked away. They thought I didn't notice the knives, but I counted them. Each one I memorized the shape of their lies, how they tilted their heads when pretending to care, how their eyes danced when my Name became the joke. They thought I was the fool, but I was the mirror. And they couldn't handle the reflection because I didn't react. They thought I didn't feel, but feeling and reacting are not the same. Some of us bleed in silence. Some of us study the wound before we strike back. And I was studying every moment, every betrayal, every false smile they threw like confetti over a coffin. They wrote me off while I was writing it all down. In my head, in my bones, tattooed on the inside of my silence. You see, silence isn't forgetting. It's remembering perfectly. It's clarity. It's a ledger. And my memory is unforgiving. I watched, and while they celebrated, I calculated every weakness, every inconsistency, every mask slipping when they thought no one saw, because silence gave me vision. While they filled the air with noise, I listened for truth, and truth always trembles before it falls. They built kingdoms of illusion, but I saw the cracks, heard the fear under the bravado, felt the desperation in their arrogance, and I smiled, not because I forgave, but because I understood. They need noise, they need chaos, they need applause to believe in their worth, but I don't need validation, I don't need the crowd, I don't need the light, I live in the shadows, I breathe in silence, I thrive in the places they're too loud to enter. I let them think I was fading. I let them believe I was defeated, and they believed it, because they need to. People fear what they cannot define, and I became something they couldn't label. Too quiet, too calm, too controlled, unpredictable. They don't fear monsters with claws. They fear the ones who wait, the ones who smile while bleeding, the ones who don't flinch when the world sets them on fire, because those are the ones who don't just survive. They return stronger, colder, unrecognizable. I was watching when they handed me silence like it was a cage, but I turned it into a throne. They tried to drown me in doubt, but I held my breath and learned to breathe beneath it. They wanted to bury me under their voices, but I became the earthquake beneath their feet. I saw through them, every one of them, the ones who smiled and whispered, the ones who stood back and said nothing, the ones who watched me fall and stepped over the wreckage. I cataloged them all. Every coward, every traitor, every shadow pretending to be light. I don't forget. I don't forgive. I don't move on. I evolve. I adapt. I rise not in anger, but in calculation. Not in fire, but in precision. They never saw the shift because I didn't need to announce it. They were too busy talking, too busy laughing, too busy writing my ending. But I don't end. I change. I sharpen. I become so. While they were dancing in their delusion, I was molding my silence into steel. I was learning the way shadows stretch, learning how to strike without sound, how to speak without saying a word. Because silence doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means everything is beneath the surface, beyond their reach. I let them show me who they are, without interrupting, without warning, without mercy. And now I know, now I've seen, now I carry the weight of truth in both hands. And when I swing, it will be righteous. They thought they could outtalk me, outshine me, outlast me. But they forgot one thing. The quiet ones are the ones who know how to listen. And the ones who listen, they always learn. And the ones who learn, they never lose. Let them speak, let them shout, let them drown in the noise they created. Because I'm still watching, but not from below, not from behind, not from silence anymore. Now I watch from above, and the reckoning is beginning to stir. In the dark, in the quiet, in me there comes a moment when the silence doesn't soothe, it sharpens. It coils around your bones like a storm waiting for permission to strike. And I felt it, the shift, the crack, the fracture in my stillness, not from anger, not from rage, but from clarity. I woke up, and everything felt colder, not empty, clear, like the fog had lifted, like I could finally see what I had been pretending not to. The games, the masks, the empty words tossed like confetti over a grave they dug for me with smiles. And I stopped pretending. The turning point didn't come with a scream. It came in silence. A silence that chose itself. Not a silence of submission, but of strategy. I no longer swallowed their venom. I studied it and learned to make my own. I no longer shrank to fit their comfort. I became something too large to contain, too sharp to touch, too silent to anticipate. I stopped caring who misunderstood me. I stopped justifying the quiet. Because the truth is simple. I wasn't quiet because I was weak. I was quiet because I was becoming. They gave me silence like it was a punishment, but I made it my training ground. Every quiet night, I built something they couldn't see. Something stronger than validation, stronger than vengeance. Identity, not the one they named me, not the one they tried to shape with shame and laughter. The real one, the one forged in what they couldn't see, the one that didn't need noise. To matter, I stopped asking why they betrayed, why they lied, why they mocked, because the why was never the answer. The who was, and I knew them now, in full. That's when the silence shifted, from defense to weapon, from wound to armor. It became the place I trained, where I shed every weakness they projected on me, where I sharpened my mind, my will, my fire. They never heard this scream because I never let it out. I buried it, and from it, something else grew, a hunger, a purpose. A fury so still it terrified me, because it was no longer about revenge. It was about return, not to who I was, but to what I was meant to be before they taught me to dim. Before they taught me that silence meant erasure. I embraced it, not as a cage, but as a forge. Every time I didn't speak, I was carving something. Not a response, a reckoning. They gave me silence, thinking I'd disappeared, but I became the ghost that haunts their comfort. I don't speak to be heard anymore. I speak when the silence is done building, when the foundation has finished cracking, when the voice I lost has grown teeth. This is that moment. This is that voice, and it no longer whispers. I don't owe explanations. I don't owe softness. I don't owe a single word to the ones who spoke knives and called it honesty. Let them choke on the silence they mocked. Let them hear it now, how loud it has become, how final, how cruel, how necessary. Because this silence, it doesn't beg, it doesn't bend, it doesn't break. It stands, it waits, it decides. And I have decided no more watching, no more recording, no more swallowing. This is where the stillness ends and the storm begins. They will hear it not in noise, but in absence, in the doors that don't open, in the looks that don't forgive, in the mercy that doesn't come, because I am no longer asking to be seen. I will be the sight they can't unsee. I am no longer begging to be heard. I will be the silence they can't unhear. They thought my quiet meant absence, but my silence was never empty. It was loaded. It was waiting. It was destined. They won't hear me coming, because I'm already here, not behind, not beneath, above. And I carry with me every moment I was overlooked, every time they mistook my stillness for surrender, every wound sealed in silence and healed. With fire, the turning point isn't a roar. It's the quiet resolve in a voice that doesn't flinch anymore. They will regret every doubt, every word, every time they laughed at the one who listened, because now I speak, and the silence speaks with me, not in desperation, but in dominion, not in fear, but in finality. Let them brace, let them pray, let them wish I stayed silent, because now they'll never silence me again. I didn't crawl out of the silence. I rose from it, like smoke rising from a fire that refused to die, like ash clinging to the wind, untouchable, unapologetic, unstoppable. You don't come back from silence the same. You come back sharper. You come back colder. You come back with a smile that doesn't reach your eyes, because you've seen too much to ever be soft again. And that's where I am now, risen, changed, beyond their reach. They still talk. Of course they do, because they need to. They need their voices to drown out what I've become. Because what I've become, it terrifies them. Not loud, not wild, not chaotic, precise, controlled, inevitable. I walk through their noise untouched. They throw shade, I wear it like a cloak. They throw fire, I feed it to my soul. You see, I learned something in the silence. I am not the version of me they tried to bury. I am the version that rose because of it. They mistook my stillness for weakness, but it was evolution. They thought silence meant surrender, but it was the final breath before the roar. Now I don't ask, I take, I don't wait. I move, I don't break. I build up brick by broken brick. I used every betrayal as foundation, every rejection as mortar, every silence they shoved down my throat as stone in my spine. I am not bitter, I am better. Not in spite of them, because of them, they gave me nothing. So I created everything, from the ruins, from the void, from the silence that became my sanctuary. Do you understand what it means to rise alone? To rise when no one believes in you. To rise with only your rage, your wounds, and your will. It means you don't fear falling anymore, because you already hit the ground and built a throne there now. They look at me with unfamiliar eyes. They whisper, they wonder. They pretend they always knew I had this in me. But I remember the doubt. I remember the silence they gave me. Not the quiet I chose, the kind where they disappeared. The silence when I needed someone. The silence when I cried and no one stayed. The silence when they turned away and told themselves it wasn't their problem, I remember. And I carry it like armor. Not out of spite, out of strategy, because that silence taught me the greatest truth. You don't need them. You never did. All you need is your fire, your fury, your refusal to kneel. Let them cling to comfort. Let them rot in mediocrity. Let them drown in the noise they used to laugh with. I am not like them. I never was. I was meant for this. The solitude, the silence, the storm they were trying to silence, the very thing that would one day consume them. My voice, my presence, my becoming now, I don't hide it. Now I own it. I don't walk into rooms hoping they'll see me. I walk in and they freeze, because they know the one they dismissed is not the one standing before them. This version of me doesn't flinch. This version doesn't explain. This version commands. And when I speak, you feel it, not just in your ears, in your bones, in the part of you that remembers what power sounds like before it's weaponized. I don't need to scream. My existence is loud enough. My silence was the scream. They just didn't know how to hear it. They do now. Oh, they do now. They hear it in the way I move, in the way I no longer chase, in the way I let go without looking back, in the way I cut clean. Because when you rise like I did, you don't come back to settle. You come back to conquer. Let them question. Let them speculate. Let them wonder what changed. I did everything did. The silence that once held me back is now the engine that drives me forward. And I will never be caged by their comfort again. I've learned to live without applause, to survive without validation, to become without permission. That is power, and they have none of it. Let them keep their voices. Let them talk. Let them shout into the wind. I am the wind now. And they can't speak over a storm. They will regret doubting my silence, not because I'll scream it at them, but because they'll see what silence looks like when it rises, when it stands tall, when it doesn't flinch, doesn't fold, doesn't fall. They'll see it in the eyes of the one they tried to break and failed. They'll see it in the way I own every scar, not as shame, but as proof. Proof I endured, proof I evolved, proof I evolved. Sharper, sharper, sharper. This is my rise. Not loud, not desperate, but absolute. And from this point on, they don't get to speak over me. They don't get to name me. They don't get to silence me again. Because I am the silence now, and it does not serve them. It consumes. Remember this voice, because you'll hear it in every corner you run to. In every shadow where you thought I disappeared. In every silence you once mocked. I'll be there. I don't speak for attention. I speak for closure. And this is the last time I offer it in words. After this, I won't need to speak. You'll feel everything I am, by everything I do. This is my vow, cold, unyielding. Final, you doubted the quiet one, the watcher, the calm before the storm. But storms do not roar when they begin. They gather, and I've been gathering for years. I've watched the world hand crowns to cowards. I've watched the loudest voices command rooms while the strongest hearts were buried in silence. I've watched them cheer for wolves in sheep's clothing while crucifying the lone one who dared wear scars in the open. But I never needed their throne. I built my own, and now I sit on it with no guilt, no shame, no apologies. You taught me silence was weakness, but silence made me lethal. You taught me silence was submission, but silence taught me patience, and patience is the sharpest blade of all, you see. I didn't rise to be admired. I rose to remember, and I remember everything, every side eye, every empty promise, every time you said I was too much or not enough, every smirk behind my back, every joke meant to slice, just deep enough that I'd bleed in secret. You laughed when I said nothing. You cheered when I disappeared. But I wasn't gone. I was growing. And now I vow this. You will feel the weight of my silence. Not through words, but through consequences, through absence, through distance, through the empire I build without your name on any stone. You wanted me to stay small, quiet, obedient, but silence does not mean servitude. It means I was sharpening every edge, planning every step, waiting for the moment when the noise dies down. And all that's left is me. This is that moment. Let them say I changed. Let them say I became someone else. They're wrong. I didn't become someone else. I became everything they were afraid I already was. I am the reckoning, the answer to every smirk, every whisper, every dismissal. I am the echo of the words you never let me speak, now made flesh. This isn't revenge. This is redemption. Not to prove anything to you, but to reclaim everything from you. You don't get to define me anymore. You don't get to narrate my silence. I am the voice behind it now, the architect of everything that follows. And what follows is fire, not the chaotic kind, not the kind that burns everything down, the kind that illuminates, because I won't dim myself anymore just to make you comfortable. I won't whisper just to spare your ego. I won't stay in the background just because it's easier to ignore me than face what you did. You don't get that luxury anymore. You lost it when you doubted me, when you mistook my stillness for surrender, when you saw me fall and laughed, but never imagined I'd rise this tall. So here's my vow. Every step I take from here will be mine, unapologetic, unforgiving, uncompromised. I'll speak when I choose, move when I decide, destroy what dares to stand in my way. I am not seeking validation. I am not asking for forgiveness. I am not waiting for applause. I am done waiting. And you will regret every second you mistook me for fragile. Every moment you thought silence meant safety. Every breath you wasted trying to mold me into less. You should have feared the quiet one. You should have listened when I said nothing. Because now the silence is gone.